The story of Candela Obscura doesn't start in a bustling city, but in a thriving, ancient metropolis. More than 2,000 years before present day, the Empire of Oldfair thrived. Emperors and empresses ruled this land, which was tucked into Hallow Harbor. The mountains which occupied Oldfair's borders allowed them to grow in peace. In this time of peace, Oldfair discovered alchemy. Realizing the awe-inspiring power that alchemy could bring to their empire, Oldfair began to divert their entire society to learning the secrets of magic. A council of powerful alchemists began to rule alongside the emperors and empresses. As their ambitions grew though, the alchemists began to construct a device to house and utilize the magic they tampered with. They hoped to fully understand the magic they handled. But in the world of Candela Obscura, magic is a dark thing. There are two worlds. One world is of sanity and normalcy, which is home to people. The other is a dimension simply known as the Beyond. Here, the world is gripped by supernatural forces that are completely different than the other. Between these worlds is a barrier that separates the two, known as the Flare. This blockade is all that keeps humanity safe from the eldritch horrors that lie beyond. However, sometimes the Flare can weaken in events known as thinnings. Dark forces start to ooze into the normal world, twisting and corrupting it in the form of magic. This was the power that the alchemists of Oldfair were attempting to harness. Yet, they were unprepared for containing the magic that they drew from the Beyond, and that power became infused into things from the normal world. Objects, places, and even people all became altered by magic as the Beyond started to twist them. Investigators in the Candela Obscura call this residual corruption from the magic bleed. From the bleed radiates strange phenomena that break the logical rules of the world. If left unchecked, the bleed's energy will continue to spread, as the Beyond's power will continue its incursions upon the normal world. When a person is overcome with the bleed, they die, or worse, are overcome by the supernatural powers of the Beyond, and are fated to be a warped husk of their former self. This is what began to happen to the citizens of Oldfair. As the unregulated experiments of the alchemists raged, the bleed began to affect the society. Madness and rot spread throughout the once prospering land as horrors beyond comprehension plagued the people. Not only the minds, but the bodies of the citizens changed until a catastrophic event occurred. Nobody knows what exactly happened on that fateful day. However, it is known that a thinning in the flare was torn apart, which likely allowed the Beyond to fully contact Oldfair. Paradoxes and supernatural phenomena unlike anything seen before or since likely ensued. The ocean floor itself was sheared into two pieces. As millions of tons of sand and rock broke apart, the vast chasm opened. The force of this created a tidal wave, likely hundreds of feet high, which slammed into Oldfair. Beneath the water and the soil, the city and its alchemical creations were buried. Centuries of alchemical progress and magical technology were lost. To this day, the vast chasm sits as an open scar upon the ocean. Water falls perpetually hundreds of feet down into the darkness below. Currents near the chasm pulled doomed travelers into it. Yet, somehow, the Candela Obscura operates one of their lighthouses at the bottom. Perhaps it is the only thing holding back the Beyond from ripping open the flare once again. Oldfair still exists today, too, beneath the new city. Catacombs filled with monsters, forgotten alchemical discoveries, and the transformed citizens of Oldfair wait to be rediscovered. But that was Oldfair. Now, sitting where it once stood on the Hallow Harbor is Newfair. This new city sits in the northern nation of Hale, in the prized land known as the Fairlands. Here, the citizens are able to farm and grow plentiful food stocks. This is in spite of a dire winter that has begun to grip the world for over a decade. People in Hale refer to this period of cold as the Shiver. Outside the Fairlands, people began to starve. Crops refused to grow as the warm, bright rays of the summer sun diminished. The growing season shortened, and food shortages touched all except those who lived happily in the fertile valley. This of course meant that those without saw Newfair as a target. Everything boiled over in the year 1898 during the last Great War. Across the Sea of Glass sits a nation that the people of Newfair call the Otherwhere. It is important to note that Candela Obscura's lore is written in the language of Hale. Hale's language is simple, direct, and describes exactly what places are. That's how we get names like Oldfair, the Vast Chasm, the Bleed, and the Fairlands, among many other names. We don't know what people from Otherwhere call themselves in their language, but to all from Hale, they are from Otherwhere. Relations in the past had been peaceful, until the Shiver happened. Otherwhere sailed around the Vast Chasm and landed in Newfair as their military attempted to capture the rich farmlands there. For 6 years, the war raged between Newfair and Otherwhere. Places around Newfair, like the West Wreck, still bear the scars of those days. Untriggered landmines cover the land in some places. The suffering was immense and led to a time of darkness. But in that darkness, the people of Newfair found light. During the war, electricity was discovered. Using their technological advantage, the military pushed back the colonizing forces into the sea. Victory was achieved, but at a terrible cost, not only to the land, but to the psyche of the city itself. Some in Newfair became nonchalant about life, living to party, never knowing if the next day will be their last. Others still grieve the loss of an entire generation of Newfair people to the horrors of war. Yet, in the 3 years since the war, as electricity has swept through Newfair, the city has undergone a radical transformation. The year is 1907, and things are hopping in Newfair. The city is vibrant, sprawling, and crackling as electricity courses through streetlights that light up the night. Wartime refugees flooded the city after Otherware's defeat, causing a population boom. While stressful, this also caused a creative mixing of cultures in this flourishing metropolis. Newfair is a city that integrates and innovates constantly, which has led to its miraculous progress over the past few years. Modern citizens of Newfair know nothing about magic. The terrors of Oldfair have long since been forgotten and replaced by the lively Art Deco scene which has swept the city. With so much to see, who could blame people for burying arcane history in favor of progress? Newfair is split into 11 districts, each with their own pleasures to experience. From the rolling greenery and college of the Briar Green to the sex work, drugs, and gambling of the Red Lamp district, there is something for everyone in Newfair. And over it all rules the Triumvirate. The 3 pillars of Newfair society, the Triumvirate guides the Fairlands. The Ascendancy, the Primacy, and the Periphery make up the Triumvirate, and although the powers claim to be separate, independent entities, in reality, they work together on many objectives. While Candela Obscura is a game filled with occult magic and monsters, sometimes the greatest horror can be found in humans themselves, and this is embodied by the members of the Triumvirate. The Ascendancy is the official religion of the Fairlands. Although not much is known about the Ascendancy's actual doctrine yet, it is a highly structured organization. The Church appoints the Ascendant from within the faith to lead the Ascendancy. From this position of power, the Ascendant can exert incredible amounts of influence over Newfair society. This is particularly distressing, since the Ascendant is highly corrupt. All of the churches, for that matter. Backdoor dealings, bribes, political favors, and more are all commonplace. Next, there is the Primacy, which is the central government of Newfair. The Primacy does elect a candidate, the Premier, to lead the Primacy. However, since all the Triumvirate is corrupt, it is suspect whether these elections are fair at all. Beneath the Premier is a cohort of individuals that make up the Chamber. The Chamber's job is to help govern Newfair's districts and surrounding areas. Out of all the members of the Triumvirate, the Primacy collaborates with the other 2 members the most, as they attempt to keep control of the Fairlands and its people. Finally, there is the Periphery, or the police force of the Fairlands. Filled with ex-soldiers and military-grade equipment, the Periphery is built for a fight. While outwardly the Periphery advocates for peaceful policing and interactions with the citizens of Newfair, that is not reality. This group is controlled by the captain of the Periphery, who is appointed by the Premier. Often, when the government has a problem that cannot be solved through coercion or bribery, the Periphery is employed. Many Farians see the Periphery as the violent hand of government. However, despite the immense powers of the Triumvirate, they are still ill-equipped to contain the dark forces that writhe beneath their city. As an organization, the Candela Obscura dates back to Oldfair. When the alchemists and their debaucherous experiments were driving Oldfair towards destruction, a group of scholars arrived. It is unknown where they came from or what their exact history was before finding Oldfair. Records do tell us that these scholars were altruistic and dedicated to containing dangerous magics wherever they were found. This alliance of scholars founded a chapter of the Candela Obscura shortly before the Great Flood and the collapse of Oldfair. Over the course of the next 2,000 years, this group of scholars expanded their influence. As the size and influence of this chapter expanded, it became the Candela Obscura organization that we find in the year 1907. The Candela Obscura is a group of protectors fighting a desperate battle against the supernatural forces that threaten Newfair. Although the mundane world has forgotten the tragic tale of Oldfair, the investigators of the Candela have not. With generations of knowledge at their disposal, it is the Candela Obscura's goal to contain, collect, and study magical phenomena. Part of the organization's methods of doing so is the constructing of lighthouses. These lighthouses are the result of attempting to contain the bleed. Each lighthouse comes equipped with a magical astrolabe that allows the structure to contain thinnings. The lighthouse acts as a final barrier to prevent the beyond from crossing the flare. Ancient and modern lighthouses alike crisscross the country of Hale. To the citizens of Newfair who do not believe in magic, the strange lighthouses are woven into their local mythos. Citizens have incorporated these lighthouses into their folklore, weaving in the strange supernatural phenomena in often inaccurate ways. For those in the Candela Obscura, though, the bleed-infested lighthouses remind them about what will happen if they should fail. If the thinnings are not contained, the corruption found within these buildings will only spread and destroy everything they've ever known and ever loved. Each lighthouse is modeled off of the Candela Obscura's base, the fourth Pharos. This massive vault is located within the flare. It is the fourth Pharos because the 3 previous versions have been destroyed due to the magical forces contained within. Only the fourth Pharos has been built within the flare. High-ranking members of the Candela Obscura found a way to access this protective space and place their most important vault within it. The Pharos is only accessible through specific thinnings in the mundane world that lead into the flare. These thinnings which allow access to the Pharos quickly became new chapter houses. A chapter house is the meeting place for a specific chapter of the Candela Obscura. In-game, it is your party's home base. Those within the chapter are referred to as a circle. The circle is made up of investigators, who are the field agents that explore these magical phenomena, and the light keepers, who are retired investigators that send the circle out on assignment. If you too want to be a part of a Candela Obscura game, check out this video right here. It will cover the basics of what you need to know. And thank you for entering the dungeon.